March 2015. The morning fog hung thick over Baltimore's harbor when construction foreman Jack Morrison's crew discovered a small wooden box containing a pearl rosary, a faded photograph, and a handwritten confession that would shatter the peaceful facade of the local Catholic community forever. What began as routine demolition of the abandoned St. Magdalene's Seminary transformed into the resurrection of Baltimore's most haunting unsolved mystery. If you're fascinated by cases where decades of silence are broken by unexpected discoveries, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because we're about to explore details that mainstream media coverage completely overlooked. Sister Catherine Marie Donnelly entered this world on February 14, 1924, in Baltimore's working-class Fells Point neighborhood. Standing 5 feet 4 inches with striking emerald eyes and auburn hair, Catherine possessed what her childhood friend Margaret O'Sullivan described as an otherworldly quality, as if she carried light within herself. Born to Irish immigrants Patrick Donnelly, a dock worker, and Mary Catherine O'Brien Donnelly, who took in laundry, Catherine was the youngest of 4 children. Her brothers followed their father into maritime labor, but Catherine demonstrated an early calling toward religious life. Even as a small child, Catherine would gather the neighborhood children for prayer circles in our backyard, Mary Donnelly told the Baltimore Sun in 1965. She had this remarkable ability to make everyone feel God's presence. Catherine harbored deep aspirations of missionary work, particularly in South America, and had been accepted into an advanced theological program. Her daily routine included morning prayers at 5:30 a.m., teaching catechism to local children, and evening studies in Spanish and Portuguese for her hoped-for missionary assignment. Baltimore in 1965 stood as a city caught between its industrial past and uncertain future. With nearly 940,000 residents, over 40% identified as Catholic, creating a tight-knit religious community where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. St. Magdalene's Seminary occupied a commanding position atop Federal Hill, its Gothic spires visible across the inner harbor. The civil rights movement had begun creating tensions within religious communities, as progressive clergy clashed with traditional congregants over integration and social justice. October 12, 1965 marked the last day anyone would see Sister Catherine Marie Donnelly alive. 5:15 a.m. Catherine attended morning lauds, where Sister Agnes Murphy noted she seemed particularly contemplative, spending extra time in personal prayer. 8:45 a.m. She taught theology class, focusing on liberation theology and South American missions. 12:30 p.m. During lunch, Catherine sat with visiting priest Father Miguel Santos, discussing missionary opportunities in Brazil. She was so excited about serving in São Paulo, Father Santos remembered. Her eyes absolutely sparkled. 1:45 p.m. Catherine excused herself early to prepare catechism materials. 2 p.m. Local children arrived for religious instruction, but Catherine never appeared. 2:15 p.m. Mother Superior Agatha found Catherine's teaching materials laid out but no sign of Catherine herself. By 4:45 p.m., the search had expanded throughout Federal Hill Park and the waterfront areas. Detective Raymond Muller arrived at 6:20 p.m., initially expecting a routine missing person report. In 30 years of police work, I'd never seen nuns just disappear, he noted. These women lived by strict schedules and rigid accountability systems. Catherine had taken nothing, no belongings, money, or clothes. Her rosary remained beside her breviary and a half-finished letter discussing her excitement about missionary work and including the prophetic line, "I feel God is calling me to something greater, though I'm not sure what form that calling will take." Most puzzling was Catherine's outdoor cloak hanging untouched, suggesting she'd left without protection against October's chill. The seminary's locked doors showed no forced entry, and several witnesses reported seeing a nun walking toward the waterfront around 2:30 p.m., though descriptions varied wildly. Have you ever lived in a close-knit religious community where everyone knows your routine? Share how you think someone could vanish from such a controlled environment. The 1965 investigation faced significant limitations without computers, DNA analysis, or reliable databases. Detective Mueller's small unit examined 5 primary suspects. Thomas McKenna, a maintenance supervisor with inappropriate interest in nuns, had intimate seminary knowledge but was eliminated when witnesses confirmed his presence at a union meeting during Catherine's disappearance. Vincent Carlucci, whose construction company worked on the seminary, showed unhealthy obsession with nuns and fled to Philadelphia claiming family emergency, but was killed in an accident before questioning. Most mysteriously, Father Andrew Morrison had arrived from Chicago 2 weeks before Catherine's disappearance, but Chicago officials confirmed no such priest existed in their records. The real Morrison had died months earlier. The impostor vanished October 15, leaving behind maps of Baltimore's waterfront and detailed notes about tide schedules. Despite FBI involvement, he was never found. Robert Henley, a seminary student expressing romantic feelings for Catherine, had been disciplined for violating interaction rules, but his confession alibi during Catherine's disappearance proved ironclad. Margaret O'Sullivan, Catherine's childhood friend, had expressed jealousy about Catherine's religious calling, but medical records confirmed her doctor's appointment across town during crucial hours. By March 1966, the case was classified cold. Detective Mueller continued investigating until his 1994 death, never accepting such a carefully planned disappearance could remain unsolved. What time is it where you're watching? Imagine 49 years passing while a family waits for answers. The Donnelly family's responses revealed different approaches to unimaginable grief. Patrick transformed pain into relentless advocacy, interviewing hundreds of residents, distributing thousands of flyers, and maintaining detailed timeline charts. His obsession cost him his doc job, but he never complained about financial sacrifices. Mary channeled anguish into spiritual devotion, attending daily mass and organizing monthly prayer vigils for 15 years. Her bedroom became a shrine to Catherine's memory, and she maintained Catherine's room exactly as when Catherine entered the seminary. Michael Donnelly became a private investigator in 1968 specifically to apply professional techniques to Catherine's case, uncovering several missed leads. Thomas and James distanced themselves from investigation, believing constant focus prevented family healing, creating lasting tensions at holiday gatherings. The case underwent 3 formal reviews. In 1975, Detective Maria Santos applied psychological profiling, concluding Catherine's disappearance showed careful planning by someone with intimate seminary knowledge and transportation access. In 1987, emerging DNA technology couldn't help because no biological evidence had been preserved. The 1994 review identified 17 missing religious women nationwide between 1960 to 1970, suggesting possible serial offender, but no conclusive connections emerged. Baltimore's landscape changed dramatically, but the case maintained mythical presence in the Catholic community's collective memory. St. Magdalene's Seminary closed in 1978, scattering nuns who'd lived alongside Catherine and making witness location increasingly difficult. Nevertheless, annual memorial services continued drawing dozens who felt connected to her story. What's the weather like where you are? Sometimes grief's seasons follow no natural pattern, with winter lasting decades. The breakthrough occurred March 18, 2015, when Morrison's crew struck something producing a distinctly different sound than concrete and steel. Heavy machinery operator Dennis Wright discovered a cedar box, remarkably preserved by dry basement conditions, containing items commanding immediate attention: a pearl rosary matching police descriptions, a photograph resembling Catherine Donnelly, and most shocking, a handwritten confession dated October 13, 1965. The 3-page confession detailed how Catherine had discovered financial irregularities in seminary mission funding accounts, money designated for South American missions being diverted to personal accounts controlled by high-ranking church officials. Catherine had confronted Father Superior Benedict Walsh October 12 morning about these discrepancies and was told to remain silent for the church's reputation. When Catherine refused and threatened contacting Vatican authorities, Walsh enlisted Thomas McKenna and another unnamed accomplice to ensure Catherine could never expose their embezzlement scheme. The confession revealed Catherine was killed accidentally during an attempt to frighten her into silence. Modern forensic analysis extracted DNA from saliva traces on the envelope seal, skin oils from fingerprints, and microscopic hair fragments. Dr. Rebecca Martinez explained that developments in DNA extraction have made it possible to develop genetic profiles from evidence samples that would have been completely useless 50 years ago. Within 6 weeks, analysis produced a complete genetic profile matching the FBI's combined DNA index system database. Hit that like button because what we learn about the confession's author will shock you beyond belief. The DNA matched Father Benedict Walsh, who'd served as Father Superior from 1962 until his 1968 transfer to Western Maryland. Walsh's DNA was on file due to his 2003 financial fraud conviction involving church funds. Now 78, he lived quietly in a Hagerstown retirement community, known as a gentle scholar who tended gardens and donated to charities. Further investigation revealed deeply disturbing behavior patterns. Church records showed Walsh personally officiated 3 memorial services for Catherine between 1966 to 1970, delivering moving eulogies about her dedication and tragic disappearance. He'd maintained contact with Catherine's family throughout decades, sending sympathy cards on disappearance anniversaries and calling Patrick Donnelly offering support. "He would tell me not to give up hope," Patrick told investigators. He said Catherine was in God's hands and someday we would understand his plan. This meant Walsh spent 50 years watching the Donnelly family suffer while knowing exactly what happened, a level of psychological cruelty demonstrating consciousness of guilt and complete lack of remorse. Meanwhile, across town at St. Catherine's Convent, another discovery was unfolding. October 2015 renovation crews found a deteriorated leather satchel containing a tarnished silver rosary, 3 handwritten letters, and a photograph. Evidence from a related case that would provide crucial corroboration. This evidence connected to another missing nun, Sister Catherine Marie Donnelly of Boston, a different Catherine, who disappeared November 15, 1955, from Baltimore's Federal Hill Convent. Born March 3, 1932, this Catherine stood 5 feet 2 inches with emerald eyes and auburn hair. Her father Patrick worked steel mills while her mother Mary cleaned houses for wealthy families. The 1955 Catherine entered religious life at 19, teaching at St. Catherine's Elementary and visiting tenement families. Baltimore pulsed with 949,708 residents, German, Irish, and Italian immigrants clustering in distinct neighborhoods. The convent housed 12 nuns serving working-class families struggling with economic uncertainty. November 15, 1955 began ordinarily for 23-year-old Sister Catherine. After normal morning routines and teaching, 4:15 p.m., Catherine entered Kowalski's corner store for soup kitchen supplies. Store owner Stanley Kowalski testified, she seemed worried, kept looking over her shoulder. 4:45 p.m. Mrs. Helen Rodriguez saw Catherine walking toward the convent. 5:20 p.m. Catherine failed to appear for evening prayers. 6 p.m. Search parties formed when her bedroom remained empty. The last confirmed sighting came from 8-year-old Jenny Murphy, who watched Catherine speak with a tall man in a dark coat near the convent's side entrance. Jenny recalled Catherine shaking her head like she didn't want to go somewhere with him. Detective Frank Morrison found Catherine's room exactly as left, rosary missing from nightstand, half-finished letter abandoned. Dearest Mother and Father, something troubling has come to my attention regarding. Evidence included muddy footprints, disturbed garden earth, torn black fabric on gate spikes, fresh expensive cigarette butts, and scratch marks suggesting struggle. Morrison investigated 5 suspects. Robert Castellano, school maintenance supervisor with inappropriate attention toward Catherine, had solid union meeting alibi. Marcus Jefferson Sr., violent father of Catherine's student, had threatened anyone meddling in family business, but wife provided alibi. Dr. Richard Beaumont, convent physician with unhealthy fascination with young religious women, had unexplained gaps in hospital whereabouts. Tommy Sullivan, dismissed seminary student with obsessive behaviors, lacked verifiable job hunting alibi. Most intriguingly, Father Vincent Kowalski, recently transferred under mysterious circumstances, possessed intimate convent knowledge and private building access. He claimed to be hearing confessions during Catherine's disappearance, but sacramental privacy prevented verification. 1955 investigative techniques proved insufficient. By March 1956, active investigation ceased under pressure to allocate resources elsewhere and Catholic Church influence discouraging clerical investigation probing. Patrick and Mary Donnelly never recovered. Patrick stopped attending Mass, began drinking, lost his steel mill job. Mary spent every dollar on private investigators, organized prayer vigils, distributed flyers. Timothy Donnelly, Catherine's 17-year-old brother, moved to Baltimore permanently, becoming a city bus driver traveling routes passing locations connected to Catherine's case. "Every day I drive these streets looking for something," he told reporters in 1963. "What time is it where you're watching? Time stopped for families 60 years ago while their pain echoes still." The breakthrough came October 2015 when Dr. Jennifer Walsh examined the discovered rosary using advanced metallurgy analysis. Microscopic DNA traces embedded in silver links were preserved by antimicrobial properties and protected by burial conditions. Modern extraction methods developed complete DNA profiles despite 60-year degradation. The DNA matched Father Vincent Kowalski, the 1955 suspect who'd been transferred to St. Catherine's Parish before Catherine's disappearance. By 2015, 86-year-old Kowalski lived in Annapolis Catholic Retirement Facility, regarded as beloved chaplain and community pillar. Church records revealed disturbing patterns of transfers every 3 to 5 years throughout Kowalski's career due to systematically covered-up misconduct allegations. Most chilling was his calculated involvement with the Donnelly family's search efforts, regularly attending memorial masses, offering comfort to grieving parents, participating in prayer vigils, all while possessing intimate knowledge of Catherine's fate. Police arrested Kowalski November 15, 2015, exactly 60 years after Catherine's disappearance. When confronted with DNA evidence, his first words were, "I've been expecting you for 60 years." Search of his room revealed Catherine's prayer book hidden inside a hollowed Bible, newspaper clippings, and photographs of Catherine taken without her knowledge. Hit that like button if you're finding these revelations as shocking as we were. Kowalski's trial began March 7, 2016. DNA evidence proved overwhelming, statistical impossibility of genetic material belonging to anyone else. During testimony, Kowalski admitted luring Catherine under pretense of providing last rites to dying parishioner. He claimed accidental death during struggle when she discovered his assault intentions, but forensic evidence contradicted this version. Judge Patricia Williams sentenced Kowalski to life without parole. "You betrayed not only Catherine Donnelly and her family, but every person who trusted you with their spiritual welfare. The calculated nature of your deception over 60 years demonstrates complete absence of remorse or humanity." Kowalski died in prison August 12, 2017. Regarding the 1965 Catherine case, Father Benedict Walsh was arrested December 2015. During interrogation, Walsh revealed the financial conspiracy went deeper than suspected, a network of clergy systematically embezzling missionary funds across multiple dioceses. Catherine's threat to expose this operation had triggered panic among conspirators. Walsh's confession led to additional arrests of retired church officials, recovering millions in stolen funds. He received life imprisonment, dying in custody 2018. Both cases resulted in significant Catholic Church policy changes and enhanced cold case investigation protocols. Catherine Donnelly's cases transformed investigation standards throughout Maryland and influenced national evidence preservation protocols. The Baltimore Police Department established the Donnelly Protocol, requiring DNA testing of unsolved homicides using latest technology every decade. Timothy Donnelly used settlement funds to establish the Catherine Marie Donnelly Foundation, providing scholarships for disadvantaged children and supporting missing persons' families. Both convents were converted to community centers with memorial gardens honoring the Catherine's memories. Modern investigators emphasize these cases demonstrate critical importance of evidence preservation and family advocacy in cold case resolutions. Family members are often the best investigators, notes Detective Matthews. Their motivation never wavers, and their institutional memory preserves details that might otherwise disappear. The cases highlight forensic science evolution from primitive 1950s to 60s techniques to sophisticated DNA analysis extracting genetic information from degraded samples. Perhaps most significantly, they illustrate how institutional protection of perpetrators enables decades of continued crimes while inflicting psychological trauma on victims' families. The 60-year gaps between crimes and resolution demonstrate that justice, while sometimes delayed, can still be achieved through dedication and technological progress. Both cases resonate because they combine betrayal of trust by respected authority figures, persistence of grieving families, and eventual triumph of scientific advancement over seemingly perfect crimes. If this deep dive into Baltimore's most haunting cold cases has captivated you, subscribe for more investigations mainstream media won't touch. Share this video and let us know what other cold cases you'd like us to investigate. The truth always finds a way to surface, no matter how long it takes or how deeply it's buried. The revelation of two separate Sister Catherine cases shocked Baltimore's Catholic community to its core, but what investigators discovered next would prove these weren't isolated incidents. As Detective Sarah Matthews began cross-referencing missing persons reports from the 1950s through 1970s, a disturbing pattern emerged that would ultimately expose what prosecutors would later call the most systematic cover-up of clerical crimes in Maryland's history. The investigation's scope expanded exponentially when Dr. Rebecca Martinez's forensic team discovered additional DNA evidence on items found in both hiding places. Advanced luminol testing revealed blood traces on fabric fragments that had been invisible to 1960s investigators. More shocking still, isotope analysis of the burial sites indicated both locations had been disturbed and resealed multiple times over the decades, suggesting ongoing access by someone who knew exactly where the evidence was hidden. What we're looking at isn't two random crimes, Detective Matthews explained to the task force assembled in January 2016. These are methodical disposals by someone who had long-term access to both locations and intimate knowledge of construction schedules. The revelation that both burial sites had been created during specific renovation periods 1965 for St. Magdalene's basement and 1955 for St. Catherine's foundation work suggested coordination with someone involved in diocesan construction planning. This breakthrough led investigators to examine diocesan records spanning 70 years, revealing that Father Benedict Walsh and Father Vincent Kowalski had worked together at 3 different parishes between 1952 and 1968. More disturbing still, church transfer records showed both priests had been moved preemptively whenever allegations surfaced, creating a systematic protection network that enabled their continued access to victims. Have you ever wondered how institutional corruption can persist for decades without detection? The Catholic Church's transfer system created the perfect environment for predators to escape consequences while maintaining positions of trust and authority. The expanded investigation uncovered evidence of at least 12 additional missing women connected to parishes where Walsh and Kowalski had served. Sister Mary Elizabeth Harrison disappeared from Annapolis in 1958 during Kowalski's tenure there. Her case file contained witness statements describing a priest offering her a ride to visit a sick parishioner, the same methodology used with Catherine Donnelly. DNA evidence from Sister Mary Elizabeth's rosary, discovered in Kowalski's possession during his 2015 arrest, confirmed the connection. In Frederick County, novice nun Teresa Rodriguez vanished in 1962 while Walsh served as assistant pastor. Her family had received anonymous letters for 30 years claiming Teresa had run away to start a new life, but handwriting analysis in 2016 matched samples from Walsh's confession. Teresa's remains were discovered in March 2016. Buried beneath the parish hall that Walsh had personally overseen renovating in 1963. The scope of the conspiracy became clear when investigators examined financial records more thoroughly. The embezzlement scheme that Catherine Donnelly had threatened to expose in 1965 involved not just missionary funds, but systematic theft from parish building funds, charity donations, and even cemetery maintenance accounts. Over 23 years, Walsh and his network had diverted an estimated $2.3 million, equivalent to nearly $18 million in 2016 currency. What made the financial crimes particularly heinous was their direct impact on the communities these parishes served. Families who had sacrificed to donate to missionary work, believing they were helping the poor in South America, were actually funding Walsh's real estate investments. Elderly parishioners who contributed to cemetery upkeep discovered their loved ones' graves had been neglected while their donations purchased vacation properties for corrupt clergy. The investigation revealed that Catherine Donnelly's knowledge of the financial irregularities had come from her volunteer work organizing missionary supply shipments. Her fluency in Spanish and Portuguese made her valuable for communicating with South American parishes, but this same skill allowed her to discover that many supposedly funded missions didn't actually exist. The letters she'd been writing to Brazilian parishes in preparation for her own missionary assignment had been returned marked, "Addressee unknown," or, "No such mission." When Catherine brought these discrepancies to Father Superior Walsh on October 12, 1965, she unknowingly triggered a panic that extended far beyond Baltimore. Phone records subpoenaed in 2016 showed Walsh made 17 long-distance calls that afternoon to clergy in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Boston, all later identified as members of the embezzlement network. By evening, the decision had been made that Catherine posed an existential threat to their entire operation. The confession found in 2015 had understated the premeditation involved. Additional evidence discovered during the expanded investigation revealed that Walsh had spent 3 days planning Catherine's murder, including reconnaissance of disposal sites and coordination with Thomas McKenna, who provided construction expertise for concealing the evidence. McKenna's 1975 deathbed confession, sealed by attorney-client privilege until his lawyer's death in 2014, provided gruesome details about Catherine's final hours. According to McKenna's confession, Catherine was lured from the seminary under the pretense of providing emergency last rites to a dying parishioner. Walsh and an accomplice drove her to a remote warehouse where they demanded she sign a document promising never to discuss the financial irregularities. When Catherine refused and threatened to contact Vatican authorities immediately upon her return, Walsh strangled her with her own rosary cord while McKenna watched in horror. McKenna's confession revealed his decades of guilt over failing to stop the murder, reported afterward. "I was a coward," he wrote. "I let fear of losing my job and my family's income silence me while that poor girl's family suffered for 50 years. His description of helping Walsh dispose of Catherine's body and personal effects provided investigators with details that could only have come from someone present at the scene. If you're wondering how such elaborate cover-ups could succeed for so long, consider that these men had spent their entire careers manipulating trust and exploiting the reverence people felt for religious authority. Who questions a priest's word, especially regarding someone who has supposedly disappeared mysteriously?" The network's sophisticated nature became apparent as investigators traced communication patterns between conspirators. They had established code words for discussing victims. Catherine was referred to as the Spanish problem in correspondence, while Teresa Rodriguez was called the Frederick situation. Financial records were kept in coded ledgers disguised as parish maintenance logs, with victim-related expenses listed under categories like foundation repair and basement waterproofing. Most chilling was the discovery of what prosecutors termed trophy collections in the homes of various network members. Walsh possessed not only Catherine's rosary and photographs, but jewelry and personal items from at least 6 other victims. Father James Brennan, arrested in February 2016 as part of the expanded investigation, had maintained detailed journals documenting his crimes with clinical detachment, rating victims' compliance, and describing methods for disposal efficiency. The psychological profiles developed by FBI behavioral analysts painted a picture of men who had started with financial crimes and escalated to murder when threatened with exposure. "These weren't crimes of passion," explained Dr. Patricia Hendricks, the Bureau's lead profiler. "These were calculated business decisions made by individuals who viewed human lives as acceptable casualties in protecting their criminal enterprise." The impact on survivors and victims' families proved devastating in unexpected ways. Patrick Donnelly, Catherine's father, had died in 1998, still believing his daughter might someday return. His widow Mary, now 91 and suffering from dementia, could no longer comprehend the news of her daughter's murder. "In some ways, her condition is a blessing," said Michael Donnelly, Catherine's brother. "She doesn't have to carry the weight of knowing how Catherine died or how long we were deceived." The revelation that Walsh had attended Patrick's funeral in 1998, offering comfort to the grieving family while secretly knowing he had murdered their daughter, epitomized the psychological cruelty of the deception. Funeral home records showed Walsh had personally selected readings about trusting in God's mysterious plan and finding peace in uncertainty. He had embraced Mary Donnelly at the cemetery, whispering that Patrick was finally reunited with Catherine in heaven. Teresa Rodriguez's family faced similar revelations. Her brother Carlos, now 73, had spent 40 years believing his sister had abandoned her religious calling to start a new life. Every Christmas, every birthday, we wondered if she was happy somewhere, he told investigators. We felt angry that she never contacted us, never let us know she was alive. Now we learned she was dead within hours of disappearing, and the man who killed her was celebrating Mass in our church for 8 more years. The expanded investigation ultimately identified 17 victims across 5 states, making it one of the largest serial killing cases in Catholic Church history. Victims ranged in age from 19 to 47, including nuns, female seminary students, and lay women who had volunteered extensively with church activities. The common thread was their access to financial records or administrative information that could have exposed the embezzlement network. DNA evidence linked the network to unsolved disappearances in Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and West Virginia. In each case, victims had vanished shortly after questioning financial irregularities or reporting inappropriate behavior by clergy. The methodical nature of the crimes, always occurring during construction or renovation periods that provided burial opportunities, demonstrated sophisticated planning and coordination. Dr. Martinez's forensic team developed new protocols for extracting DNA from degraded religious artifacts, techniques now used nationally for cold case investigations. Religious items like rosaries and prayer books often preserve biological evidence better than expected, she explained. The metals used in religious jewelry have antimicrobial properties, while parchment and certain inks can actually protect DNA from environmental degradation. The breakthrough in evidence analysis came from combining traditional forensic techniques with archaeological methods. By treating burial sites as archaeological digs rather than standard crime scenes, investigators recovered microscopic evidence that had been invisible to earlier examinations. Soil analysis revealed chemical signatures from decomposition, while pollen samples provided seasonal timing information that corroborated witness statements from decades earlier. Advanced isotope analysis of victims' remains revealed geographical information about where they had lived and traveled, confirming their identities even when traditional identification methods failed. Bone chemistry indicated nutritional patterns consistent with convent diets, while dental work matched records maintained by Catholic healthcare systems. The legal proceedings that followed proved as complex as the investigation itself. Defense attorneys argued that the extreme passage of time violated due process rights, while prosecutors countered that the defendants' own actions in concealing evidence had prevented earlier resolution. The Maryland Supreme Court ultimately ruled that systematic concealment of crimes constituted ongoing criminal activity, resetting statute of limitations calculations. During Walsh's sentencing hearing, prosecutor Jennifer Matthews read victim impact statements from 17 families. "You didn't just murder these women," she addressed Walsh directly. "You murdered them again every time you comforted their families, every time you celebrated their memorial masses, every time you offered prayers for their safe return while knowing you had buried them like garbage." Walsh's response revealed the depth of his psychological disturbance. "I prayed for forgiveness every day," he claimed. "I hoped God would reveal their locations to someone else so their families could find peace." When asked why he never simply revealed the information himself, Walsh replied, "That would have meant admitting my sins publicly. I believed private penance was sufficient." The Catholic Church's institutional response involved the largest financial settlement in Maryland history, $47 million distributed among victims' families and survivors. More significantly, the diocese implemented comprehensive reforms including mandatory background checks for all personnel, financial transparency requirements, and independent oversight boards with subpoena power. Archbishop William Morrison, no relation to the construction foreman who discovered the evidence, issued an unprecedented public apology acknowledging institutional failures that enabled the crimes. "We betrayed not only these specific victims and families, but every person who trusted us to uphold sacred values of truth, justice, and protection of the innocent," he stated. "No amount of money can restore what was taken, but we commit to ensuring such systematic evil never again finds shelter within our institution." The investigation's impact extended beyond criminal justice to academic research on institutional corruption and trauma. Universities developed case studies examining how authority structures can enable systematic abuse, while psychology researchers studied the long-term effects of ambiguous loss on families who spent decades wondering about missing relatives. Dr. Amanda Chen's groundbreaking research on institutional gaslighting, used the Baltimore cases as primary examples of how organizations can manipulate truth to protect themselves while inflicting psychological damage on victims and families. Her work influenced policy changes in institutions ranging from schools to healthcare systems, establishing protocols for handling internal misconduct allegations. The cases also transformed Catholic seminary training, with new curricula addressing financial ethics, transparency obligations, and recognition of abuse patterns. Seminaries now require coursework in trauma counseling and legal reporting requirements, preparing future clergy to support victims rather than institutions when conflicts arise. As we conclude this investigation into Baltimore's most shocking cold cases, remember that justice delayed doesn't mean justice denied. The courage of families who never stopped seeking truth, combined with advances in forensic science and investigative techniques, ultimately exposed crimes that their perpetrators believed they had hidden forever. These cases remind us that evil often wears the mask of respectability and authority. The most dangerous predators aren't strangers lurking in shadows, but trusted figures who exploit their positions to harm those they've sworn to protect. Sister Catherine Marie Donnelly and the other victims died because they chose truth over silence, justice over complicity. If this investigation has moved you, honor these women's memory by supporting organizations that aid missing persons' families and advocate for institutional transparency. Subscribe for more deep investigations that mainstream media won't pursue, and remember, someone, somewhere, knows something about every unsolved case. Truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply buried or how many years pass. The Pearl Rosary that started this investigation now rests in the Baltimore Police Department's evidence room, but its discovery changed everything. Sometimes the smallest objects carry the greatest truths, and sometimes justice arrives exactly when it's needed most, even if that's 60 years late.